What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Paradigm Shift podcast. What's going on, Eric?
Woo, we're back. It's the Paradigm Shift podcast, the only podcast on the internet.
I'm glad we're still rolling with that intro.
Yep.
I've actually been sort of looking forward to this episode. This is like the highlight of my week, and I'm on holiday, so that's not very impressive.
That's a bit depressing, isn't it?
That is a little bit depressing. Look, I really like me some philosophy.
So tell us, what do we have planned today? Because this is today we've got some real plans going on. We've even cut this thing into segments and everything. Come on, tell us.
Okay, yep. So today we'll be discussing competing Hellenistic philosophies. So do you know what Hellenistic means?
I do know what philosophy is.
Okay, well, that's a good start. Hellenistic, the Hellenistic period in Greece history, or Greek history, is sort of the section or the period of time after Alexander the Great's death until the Greece got taken over by Rome and became part of the Roman Empire. So it's like that 323 BC to like something in the 10s BC section of time in which Greece had a lot of influence because, you know, Alexander the Great created this huge empire. So the ancient Greeks had a lot of influence during this period, and philosophy also took a turn. But yeah, if you recall from Aristotle, he died pretty much the year after Alexander the Great died. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle were all Hellenic philosophers.
Ooh.
Hellenic being, you know, before Alexander the Great's death, and then Hellenistic being after. And yes, that's highly confusing.
That doesn't make it. That's could have chosen a few better names, couldn't you?
Definitely. You look, Hellenic, Hellenistic, just remember they're both Greek things, and you've pretty much got it. Yeah, because I don't want to get stuck on the Greece stuff for too long. I know there's so much to cover about ancient Greece, but it's just, I want to get forwards. I want to start making progress. So today will be the last episode we spend on this, and then we're going to go to Rome. And that's going to be super exciting.
Incredible. We're moving up in time.
Yeah, I mean, especially if we started, I'm just thinking, especially if we started covering like all different kinds of philosophy, like aesthetics and metaphysics and crap, we'd be here for all year trying to cover Greek.
Yeah, exactly,
Greek
dude.
history.
Dude, I am just so excited for today's episode of History Crash Course.
I mean, this is like philosophy crash course. They have a series on that, right?
Probably.
Probably. We're not going to be covering much politics at all. So if you're in it for the politics, then you could probably tune out at this point. But
this is not your episode.
You don't get viewers.
Yeah, please stay.
Please stay, because you're one of few. No, but if you're interested in ethics, if you're interested in a dog person public masturbator, then, you know, this is the episode for you. Because he's who we're starting off with.
If you're part of one of those two very wide demographics, people who like ethics and people who like public masturbation, we've basically encompassed everyone. Everyone in the world is one of two people. They either like ethics.
No, but if you like dogs, then you might also see.
Okay.
You might also enjoy this. Yeah. If you like pleasure in general, you know, how much can we generalize this? If you like thinking, if you like rational thinking, then philosophy is for you, and this podcast is something to do with philosophy. Therefore, this podcast is for you. Boom. We got all the humans on our side.
Incredible.
Except like 90% of them. Rational thinking jokes. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter.
Haha, classic.
Haha, classic. People are dumb.
Haha, people dumb. I'm smart.
Yeah, okay. And smooth transition. Let's get into the actual content.
All right.
So I'm a quick sort of a wait. What do you call the opposite of a recap? Forecap. That sounds dumb.
Wait.
Okay, we're gonna be what?
What?
What do you call the opposite of a recap?
I don't know. What is the opposite of it's...
Wait. I mean... Okay, anyway, here's a quick preview.
Preview, that works.
Quick preview of what we're going to be covering. So Diogenes, as mentioned previously, then Epicurus, and then Zeno of Citium, not to be confused with Zeno of Zeno's paradoxes, which we've casually skipped over. If you want us to do an episode on Zeno's paradoxes and metaphysics, leave a comment down below.
Please.
Yep, not we lack comments as well. So if you have comments, then we'd appreciate that. And Diogenes was pretty much a co-founder of Cynicism. Epicurus was the founder of Epicureanism. What a surprise. And Zeno of Citium was the founder of
Scientology.
Scientology, no, Stoicism, which pretty much takes its roots from Cynicism. So these are like the three big ones, the three big sort of post Socratic philosophies that are based on ethics. So sort of moving away again from thinking about politics and thinking about like big universal questions like what exists and what doesn't, and moving back to how to live a good life.
Yeah, I feel like
ethical questions.
Yeah, I feel like from your description so far, I can already tell that this is going to be a lot more like before when we talked about Aristotle and like Confucius. It was a lot more based on the community around you. I feel like now we're going to be moving a lot more into like personal ethics and like because Stoicism, Cynicism, those are all things that like are personal traits.
Exactly, individualistic. These are very individualistic. These philosophies that we're covering here, they don't get too much into community life, and well, I mean, obviously, it's always going to be a part of it, but they focus a lot on how I individually can live a good life. So that is what it's going to be about. Diogenes actually, just to give a quick recap on the years, like I said, Aristotle died 323 BC. Diogenes actually also died 323 BC. He was a contemporary of Plato, and he was influenced a lot by Socrates. So this guy doesn't actually come after the philosophers we've already discussed. He's just a more minor one. But Epicurus and Zeno do come after. They are both they take their inspiration from Aristotle and Diogenes and Antisthenes and these people who are just sort of these predecessors that lived in this around the same time as Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and that big trio. So Diogenes was a contemporary of Plato and Aristotle, but the other two aren't. So the other two we are actually making some progress chronologically as well. Okay. Just to give you a wider context on actually the time periods as well, because I do find that important.
It'd be weird if we were going backwards.
It would be weird if we were going backwards. We might have to do that at some point. If you want us to go backwards towards cavemen, then leave a comment down below.
If you want us to just like keep going backwards until we eventually loop back to modern day.
Yep, and then start working backwards from there. Then leave a comment down below.
Exactly, we're just gonna integer underflow into, the 50th century, and
okay, this is already a very inefficient start to the episode because we have a lot of content to cover.
Right.
So now that after that quick preview, let's get into it. Diogenes, I heard from you over WhatsApp before. You know a little bit about Diogenes. I don't know how much.
He was a fun guy.
You've heard of him. Many have.
He's a crowd favorite for a layman psychology. Because it's like, haha, he did the funny things.
Haha, yeah. I guess that's a good way to explain it. Like, people who aren't really in it for the philosophy, but just casual laymen. I mean, he's the sort of philosopher you'd know about because, indeed, super funny, sort of weird fellow, very unique. Let's put it that way. Okay, so Diogenes was born in Sinope, which is a city on the Black Sea in modern-day Turkey. He ended up in Greece because his father was a banker, and they were both sort of involved in this debasement of currency scandal and got exiled. So
there sure is a lot of exile in history.
There is a lot of exile. People liked exile. Hey, there's still exile today, but I think we call that like
deportation. Yeah.
Deportation.
And it's not really used as much as a punishment anymore.
No, but apart from for immigrants sometimes.
Yeah, or like, yeah, exactly. Deportation
Refugees,
is like,
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's that recent
For
story
them, it's
about.
used as a punishment once in a while.
There's that
Because
there's that
whatever.
recent story about the lady who went and joined ISIS and was like, "Wait, this isn't fun," and tried to come back, and they were like, "No, we're not letting you back in."
Interesting. I heard of two ladies who tried to join ISIS and ended up working as sex slaves for them, and then tried to escape and died.
Yeah, exactly. Recently, like very recent, there was a story of like a lady who went, joined ISIS, was like, "Wait, they're not treating me all that well," and came back.
Yeah.
But she's still like, she's so radicalized that even like in interviews, she just sees it as like not that bad a thing. It's very interesting.
Uh-huh.
It's something to talk about.
Well, that is interesting. Maybe I can take a look at that as well later. What exactly, what people are like post radicalization after coming back into society. That is an interesting topic. If you wanted to cover it in a future episode, comment down below. Okay. you know, if you have anything to say, just comment it down below,
Please,
please.
please, we need the numbers.
There's a story about Diogenes that apparently visited the oracle at Delphi, like so many before him, and the oracle told him to deface the currency.
Ah,
So he tried to deface the currency, and it didn't work. So then he decided, what the oracle probably meant was deface the political currency,
aha.
and decided to make it his life goal to challenge established customs and values. Okay,
Good start.
interesting. It's a story. I like the sound of it, so I'm just going to choose to accept it as fact, and I will remember it to tell it to future people as well. Let me just begin publicly masturbating to challenge established customs,
Reasonable.
which isn't even a terrible exaggeration of his thought process. Because his argument was pretty much social customs are an artificial regression from the happiness provided by nature. In order to live morally, that automatically implies a return to the simplicity of nature. He's been quoted as saying humans have complicated every simple gift of the gods. What do you think about that?
Sounds like a whole load of, philosophy. It's I, you know, it's
We'll get more into it in a minute, and you can start thinking about it a bit more. And interesting fact: Diogenes is the first, or was the first known person to use the word cosmopolitan. Socrates had already claimed to be a citizen of the world rather than of a particular city, but Diogenes was the first person to use like that word cosmopolitan in saying that I am a citizen of the world, which translates to cosmopolites in Greek or something, which is where we get the word cosmopolitan from. And back in the day, that was a radical claim in Greece because identity was tied to your city-state.
right. Yeah.
I don't know how much you know about that. Polis is the term for a city-state, and that's pretty much what a lot of philosophy and social interaction was based on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I feel like sort of like this nationalism, but for like city states.
Exactly.
Like,
Yep.
it existed a lot back in the day, and then so somewhere in the middle there, it kind of got lost a little until it got reimagined again, like more recently.
Yeah, or well, I mean, reimagined. Well, I guess, yeah, but I mean,
Into nationalism, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they were using that as inspiration, obviously, but sometimes people get similar ideas and then, simultaneously, independently of each other. Well, this wouldn't be simultaneously, but independently of each other. And then, maybe the more recent one is more or less reasonable. I don't know. Regardless, it does. All this does sort of bring to mind a question. So I've put it down in my notes as a side note, but it is very interesting, so I do want to mention it. And the question is, does justice derive from social constructs? Because it's also discussed in Plato's Republic. Now Diogenes was a huge critic of Plato, but but it is discussed in Plato's Republic, the question of whether such a virtuous man can exist, that if it weren't for fear of punishment, he still, or like even without fear of punishment, he still wouldn't act unjustly. And that's depicted in a story, like I said, in Plato's Republic, about the ring of Gyges, which is pretty much somebody is given an invisibility ring and somebody isn't, and somebody's given an invisibility ring and somebody's given a normal ring. Or what? No. See, I forget. No. But two people are given invisibility rings. They both get invisibility rings. One person uses it to sort of escape punishment and do whatever the hell he wants, and the other person doesn't. And the argument is, there doesn't really exist a person who wouldn't use it for quote unquote unjust purposes. And even if they did, then everybody would believe that person a great fool, while still pretending openly to each other to be like, oh yeah, what a responsible, smart man, just to keep up appearances. And it's like justice is a social construct.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Okay, that's an interesting concept, yes. I mean, I feel like with what we know more nowadays about like psychology and, biology, all that, I feel like humans would still have the moral obligation written into them to, some of them at least to be good people. I feel like it definitely differs on a case-to-case basis. But I feel like, I mean, humans are social animals, and there's a lot of, benefit for a social animal to help out its fellow people and, not hinder them horribly. But
yeah, Plato agrees with you somewhat. Because his response to this question, he likes to bring up, he used that sort of dialectic method, or with dialogues in his texts were all dialogues pretty much, like where Socrates is talking to other people. I'm sure you know. And so this question was brought up by one of the interlocutors, and Socrates responds pretty much by explaining that the man who chooses not to use the ring, it remains rationally in control of himself and is therefore happy, whilst the person who doesn't has in fact enslaved himself to his appetites, and thus that somehow makes him less happy because he's not rationally in control of himself. We'll have some kind of maybe some sort of troubles.
Yeah,
psychologically.
I kind of understand where he's getting at there. There's like I feel like with the way you've been raised, or with the way you've just experienced the world as you grow up, there's a certain moral barrier you have that you wouldn't cross, and it's different for every person. I feel like some people would definitely do a lot more with such an invisibility ring than others. I feel like there would also be people who would just not. I don't think it's okay, how do I...
we can't ever really know how much of that would still be based on your upbringing. But, it is, even after you are relieved from any possible punishment, that old sort of preconception would probably, I imagine, stick with you. So you can't probably really know. But it is an interesting question, and we're gonna casually sort of move on from it so as not to get stuck on one topic.
Right.
But that's something for the viewer to think about.
Yep. What's the thing in Matt's books?
Oh right. It is. Wait. It is left as an exercise for the reader. The proof is left as an exercise for the reader. Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. The worst thing about maths books. Okay, luckily I haven't seen it myself, but apparently it exists because it's a meme. So let's go back to Diogenes, because he did the funny things, and the funny things are entertaining.
Yeah, he was witty and stuff. Hey.
Yay! How much did Diogenes own, Eric?
The sun.
What? So apparently he owned some rags and a barrel. Well, I don't know if he owned it. He stayed there sometimes. He sometimes slept in a clay wine jar. and a wooden bowl, but he didn't own that for very long.
Ah.
You know the story. Do you know the story of how he got rid of his wooden bowl?
Ah, yes, the wooden bowl story. It's a classic fable.
It is actually. I mean, not a
Yeah.
classic fable per se, but a lot of people know about it because so he pretty much he renounces material possessions. He's like, wow, what is even the point of material possessions? They just cause you stress as you try to keep them and protect them and maybe hoard more, and you can't even keep them after you die. So, you know, material possessions, so what social constructs, what are they good for? I'm not a part of your system. And he
took the wooden bowl and he threw it on the ground.
That is exactly what happened. He pretty much he has this wooden bowl. Okay, that's like one of his only possessions, apart from some rags that he wears, and he uses it to eat food out of. But then the story is he sees a peasant boy drink from a puddle on the ground from the hollow of his hands, like with cupped hands. He like takes water from the puddle and drinks it. And Diogenes is like, quote, "Fool that I am to have been carrying superfluous baggage all this time," and he throws it on the ground. And there are paintings of this event. Like, well, people love painting things, but
that just seems really try hard, man.
Yeah, I've seen like clips of TV shows that parody these sort of events. It's like, that bowl is a material possession. Good point, and he throws it away.
Yeah, that just seems like a bit too overkill to be practical. Like, I get the symbolisms, but like, buddy.
I mean, I already. What do you mean, dude? Why would you need a bowl? You already have your cupped hand. It's like pretty much a natural ergonomic bowl
with holes everywhere. I mean,
hey, he's not a part of your system. Yep, and you know he pretty much didn't understand indulging yourself in using bathrooms and stuff. So you urinate and defecate in public, masturbate as well, as mentioned, multiple occasions already. He apparently.
What a great guy.
Yeah, what a great guy. Apparently, one of his comments on his public masturbation was, "If only I could satisfy hunger by rubbing my stomach," or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. So he was like, you know, it's perfectly reasonable, of course, if I feel the urge to, you know, just to whip out the dick, you know.
Yep.
But yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So this guy, he clearly had no limit. He would sleep whenever he felt like it. He would eat whenever he felt like it, including within the marketplace, which was against Athenian customs. But he was like, you know, I eat when I'm hungry, right? You know, if you know. So, well, pretty reasonable. If I feel like taking a piss, I'm gonna take a piss.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Boom, human.
You know, if
if everyone followed that system, that totally wouldn't be incredibly chaotic.
No, what do you mean? It would be perfectly fine. Walking out there on the streets would be an experience.
You would have like 1700 sprint.
Yeah. What? Pardon?
It's essentially the same thing until about 200 years ago, until we actually had like plumbing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good. You know, there's this thing called disease and illness.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they're problematic.
Well, you know, I imagine back in the day they didn't really have microscopes handy, so they couldn't really, you know, figure out germs.
But nature, man. Nature.
Look, if you got sick, that's just a plague from God that sent us a punishment for whatever the government thinks is bad at the time.
What?
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 I'm just being confusing on purpose.
Okay, we're gonna skip that and go. Moving on. What else did Diogenes do? Funny stories. Well, he would stroll about in full daylight with a lamp. And why would he do this? Do you know?
Why would he do this? Tell me. Why would he do this? Why has he done this?
He needs the lamp to look for an honest man. That's what he would say. He's like,
God damn it, Diogenes.
Why are you carrying a lamp in full daylight? And he's like, just looking for an honest man. Well, an alternative translation is just looking for a human being. Because apparently he didn't believe that there are real human beings.
Just looking for an honest man, like, bro, your lights on.
Interesting.
Bro, your lights on. I found one.
Yeah, I have no idea what it's supposed to mean. A lamp in full daylight, like what the symbolism is there. No sources explained it. I think it was just some random antics. I don't know what that has to do with honesty, but sure. It like, and yeah, I guess the point is that daylight isn't good enough. You also need the light of the lamp to find an honest man. I don't know. I don't know what it means.
He's just trying to be pretentious.
He is. Oh, and do you know Zeno's paradoxes? Because I mentioned them earlier. Diogenes famously disproved one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, Zeno's paradox with the one with Achilles and the turtle, and they have racing. And the idea is the time it takes for Achilles to catch up to the turtle. If the turtle gets a head start, in that time the turtle will have moved a little bit further forwards. And for Achilles to catch up to the turtle again, the turtle will have moved a little bit further forwards. For Achilles to catch up to the turtle again, the turtle will have moved a little bit further forwards. So Achilles can actually never get past the turtle. Have you heard about this one?
I don't get it.
The point is that Achilles can never get past the turtle, because in order to get past the turtle, he first has to catch up to the turtle, and in the time it takes to catch up to the turtle will have moved.
But if you catch up to the turtle, but no, hold on, but if you to catch up to the turtle in the first place, you have to get to them. You're just like, we add the what? No, this doesn't make any sense.
Because... No, wait. So like, you take the 2 points. Where Achilles is right now and where the turtle is right now.
Yes.
And now for Achilles to get to where the turtle is at that point in time, in the time it takes for him to get to that, point where the turtle was, the turtle will have moved a little bit.
Okay, but why does he stop there? Why is he like, I've caught up to where the turtle was?
Let me just... He doesn't stop. He keeps running. It's just, again, it's he has to perform an infinite amount of actions. Okay, let's try another one of Zeno's paradoxes that maybe you'll understand. It's the classic one. In order to walk, I don't know, say 1 meter, you first need to walk half a meter. But in order to walk half a meter, you first need to walk a quarter of a meter. But in order to first walk a quarter of a meter, you need to walk an eighth of a meter, etc.
I watched a Vsauce video on this.
Yeah, so you have to perform an infinite amount of actions in order to move a finite distance. It's like, wow, it can't be possible. You can't do infinite actions.
Whoa.
In finite time. Except, wait, you can, and it's called a super task. We don't talk about that.
Wait, okay. That's illegal.
But the way that, at least that's according to Vsauce's video. It's been a long time since I watched it. But yeah, what Diogenes did is, well, after hearing this paradox, is he got up and he walked a few meters.
Yeah, exactly. That's like what?
We're pretty much entirely missing Zeno's point, but still, good job. And again, if any viewers are still confused, this Zeno is a different Zeno than the Zeno we'll be talking about later. I don't know why Greeks have to be called the same things. This Zeno is a pre-Socratic Zeno. The later Zeno is a post-Socratic Zeno. Don't get confused. If you're still confused, then there's nothing of worth left in your cognition. Feel free to cry. That was the reference to Studio C, which probably nobody will get. If by some miracle one of the 10 viewers got that reference, leave a comment down below.
Leave a comment down below.
Diogenes had a great distaste of Plato, because he thought Plato was horribly misinterpreting Socrates' teachings. Obviously the correct interpretation of Socrates' teachings is to throw away all your material possessions and live in a barrel on the streets and, obviously. So what he would do is he would go intentionally try to piss off Plato.
Mm-hmm.
For example, he when Plato's giving antics, this is in fact in Athens. Did I explain that? Yeah, Diogenes, that's how he ended up in Athens, with the exile and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So this is in Athens. What he would go to Plato's lectures and he would loudly eat food in the front row, or he would shout and stuff. He would just try to be really annoying and disruptive. And there's a funny story of Plato during one of his lectures defining man, sort of tongue-in-cheek, as featherless biped.
Classic.
Classic. So what did Diogenes do? He plucked a chicken and brought it to the academy, Plato's academy, and went, I brought you a man. And then the academy changed the definition of man from featherless bipeds to featherless bipeds with broad flat nails. And I find that hilarious.
That's just
I brought you a man.
All of Greek philosophy is just so extra.
I know. Ooh. The story about Alexander the Great. Do you know that one? I think you know that one.
Yeah, I do know that one, but tell the audience.
All right. So at some point, Diogenes pretty much gets captured by pirates or something, and he ends up in Corinth. Not sure what the sequence of events are, but anyway, he ends up in Corinth, and whilst visiting Corinth, Alexander the Great knows Diogenes is there, so he asks to see him. He walks up to this barrel where Diogenes is chilling, and he's like, I'm Alexander the Great, the, super powerful, most powerful man in the world, in the known world, and what can I do for you?
I've got like 1,000 Instagram followers.
Yep. He's like, what can I do for you, Diogenes? And Diogenes is like, move out of my light. Because Alexander the Great was standing in front of him in a manner that was blocking the sun. And he was like, move to the side, get out of my light. So Alexander is like, oh, okay. That's the one favor you want from me, okay. He turns back to his men and he loudly exclaims, if I were not Alexander the Great, I would quite like to be Diogenes. He's sort of impressed by the guts on this man, or the guts this man has. He goes, he says that, and Diogenes overhears him, and he goes, if I were not Diogenes, I would also still quite like to be Diogenes. And that's it. That's the entire story. Alexander just leaves, I guess. He's like, okay.
History sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
so many awesome stories.
Except for all the dying.
Except for all the dying. The dying is unfortunate, but, sometimes you just got to deal with it. I'd love to talk about the Spartans, because they have lots of witty quotes as well. But, they didn't do any philosophizing, so... And dying. But they didn't do any philosophizing, so we're gonna... So we can't really cover them in this podcast. Maybe we can expand later. We can expand the business. This isn't a business. We can expand the business to include other areas.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we can do 7 podcasts a week.
Whoa,
on different topics.
Wait a minute. What?
Maybe we can do 42 podcasts a day.
Hold on, wait a second.
1 per hour.
Wait a minute. That's incorrect.
Oh. That was a reference to two-set violin. Okay. So, all of that is stuff Diogenes did, but yet there's one more story of his death. When Diogenes, when he was asked what he wanted to be done with his body after he died, he advised them to throw him over the walls so he could be eaten by the animals. They were like, what? He was like, well, if you're so disturbed by it, then, you can give... Yes, you know the story! Yes! Give me a stick with which to fight off the animals. And they're like, if you're dead, you'll lack the awareness to use the stick. He's like, if I'm dead, wouldn't I then also lack the awareness to, care that my body's being eaten by animals? Boom,
boom, got him. What's a stick for?
No, I guess he just asked for the stick to make that point.
Just to annoy them.
Just to annoy them, just to be able to hit him with that sick burn, like
Diogenes, in a nutshell, Just to
in a
annoy them.
nutshell. Okay. So in a nutshell, what was his philosophy really about? He was Diogenes the cynic. So this is cynicism, is how he was acting. The word cynic actually derives from ancient Greek, unsurprisingly. The words kunikos or kinikos, I can't pronounce it, which means dog-like.
Yeah.
And they were called dog-like for a reason. I mean, first off, Antisthenes, which was probably the first founder of cynicism, and a guy who lived in Athens when Diogenes did. So Diogenes really liked Antisthenes. They were pretty chill with each other. Antisthenes was a student of Socrates. I mentioned him in one of the earlier episodes, but you probably don't remember because I only mentioned his name when I said that he was one of the other sources, like the other source in addition to Plato, from which we know about Socrates, right? Antisthenes. But yeah, so first off, Antisthenes would teach in a gymnasium called the Cynosarges. I don't know how to pronounce it, which translated to place of the white dog. That's one thing. And then also, I mean, all the cynics act like dogs. They sleep wherever they want. They eat wherever they want. They just live in the present and don't care about anything. And that meant that Diogenes really liked dogs as well and had felt kinship with them. And apparently, dogs followed him around a lot, and he really and liked him as well. So even though calling them dog-like was undoubtedly originally meant as an insult as well, calling the cynics dog-like, Diogenes really embraced that. He was like, yeah, I'm dog-like, and dogs are better than humans.
I like it.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, personally, I've felt that before. Like when I was younger, I'd look at the dog and I'd be like, oh, man, I'd love to be a dog. No responsibilities. You can just do whatever the hell you want. Don't have to worry about school.
Yeah, well, Niki,
grades,
and if the dog wasn't a dog, he would also like to be a dog.
The reversal. I'm glad you're already putting into practice what you're learning here. So what are the fundamental principles of cynicism? I mean, well, we've covered a few of them, but in the interest of time, let's be super brief now.
All right.
The goal of life, like Aristotle thought, is eudaimonia. If you remember that term, which pretty much means happiness, welfare, stuff like that. They agree with that, okay? But the cynics also qualify that by saying, with mental clarity and lucidity, without false belief, mindlessness, folly, or conceit, eudaimonia.
All right.
And they believe, social constructs would be, of course, mindlessness and folly. What is their point? Happiness is achieved by living in accord with nature. What were you gonna say?
Who needs society? Just like piss everywhere,
Yeah.
What even is useful about?
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing, except for living.
Yep. So I have some other bullet points here, but long story short, the only way to achieve happiness is living in accordance with nature for some damn reason. There's not really an explanation why, apart from that explanation that like these practices free you from the sort of the troubles and stress of needing to deal with material wealth, right? Like the thirst for more wealth and the fear of losing it. Pretty much you try to escape from fear and achieve just being able to be happy and content in the present.
Dude, every night before I go to sleep, I just cry from fear because of just fear of losing my copy of Euro Truck Simulator 2 Special Edition, including the Go East pack, which allows me to access Poland.
I get what you're saying, but I don't think depression I don't think people are inflicted by depression who, just like don't give a damn, like Diogenes. I don't think he was ever depressed, so there's that. I mean, what do you think usually causes depression? Because I don't know. It's an actually honest question.
I don't know, man. I'm just so afraid of losing my copy of Euro Truck Simulator.
No, but it definitely stresses you out to be for poor people.
To own a copy of Euro Truck Simulator.
No. Like having to work hard to put food on the table and help save a family and pay rent. You know, I guess that's not like, you're not like super happy all the time. I guess that puts you under a lot of pressure. So Diogenes would prefer to not give a damn. Which, you know, I mean, I get it, but we're gonna get into a better version of cynicism, in my opinion, with stoicism here in a minute. Next, we've got Epicurus. Epicurus was born on the Greek island of Samos. So he's not... well, actually, never mind. I was going to say he's not an immigrant, but I said, you know, I mean, the previous place, hold on, what was it called? Sinope? Yeah, Sinope. That place was in modern day Turkey, but back then, of course, I guess it would be part of Greece. I mean, who else? Alexander the Great would have taken it over at least. So, okay. But he was born on the Greek island of Samos. I mean, they're both immigrants in the sense that Athens, obviously, is a city-state, and only people who are, you know, born there, like, get to be citizens. But anyway.
Yes.
He was born on the Greek island of Samos, and he was influenced by Aristotle a lot. So unlike Diogenes, who was pretty much a contemporary of Plato's and lived at the same time as Plato did, Epicurus was born like a number of years, 7 to 9, something like that, years after Plato's death, and he was influenced by Aristotle's thoughts a great deal, and also possibly the Cynics. But he turned against Platonism and founded his own school, which he called the Garden in Athens. Yes, everybody's still founding their own schools.
Ah, lovely.
Last time we went over the sort of drama with Aristotle founding his own school, again to compete with Plato's school because he didn't become the successor to Plato.
I'm gonna start my own school and I'm gonna go to nationals.
Wait, this is not an anime. This is not a philosophy anime. Oh, philosophy sports anime coming when?
Coming when? Debate club anime.
Coming when?
Debate club anime.
I would watch it. I would watch it. But Epicurus's philosophy of Epicureanism, I find a lot more tempting than this philosophy of Diogenes. Is probably because I'm a slave to the system. But anyway, according to Epicurus, his philosophy, its purpose is to attain a happy, tranquil life by achieving ataraxia and aponia. More Greek words. I know you never remember them, and I don't either. But you know, may as well bring them up while we're here and using them.
Look, Niki, it's all just Greek to me.
They all sound the same to me. They all look the same to me.
That's racist.
No, wait, no. Ataraxia means peace and freedom from freedom from fear specifically, but peace and freedom from fear. And aponia means the absence of pain.
Right.
So to Epicurus, you know, we try to achieve a happy life as well. So happiness is great, and we do that by achieving freedom from fear, by getting rid of pain, and finding peace, and also living a self-sufficient life surrounded by friends. He likes social interaction, unlike Diogenes, who's like, I like dogs.
He's not
people are all dumb.
Yeah, this one's not very antisocial.
This guy is not antisocial, which is nice because humans are social animals, and I would really hate being Diogenes. Like, imagine living a life where you just hate everyone and everyone hates you. That's really lame. Okay, I don't like. Not for me.
Yeah, exactly. How much can you really do when you're just like living on the street and like nobody wants to talk to you because you're just like. Let's be honest, you're just like a homeless bum on like the corner of the street in your barrel.
You're a voluntary homeless bum.
Yeah, and you're like trying to be all like witty and stuff, but you sound like all the other drunks on all the other streets.
Yep.
No one's gonna listen to you because you know.
The thing with cynicism is it gave like poor and homeless people a way to like live happily. Sort of gave them an out in life. So like it actually spread in popularity, especially in like the early Rome, like 1st century AD. Lots of homeless poor people like, yo, cynicism, that's for me.
Yes.
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 You can see how the term has evolved with such negative stigma in modern day, like what cynicism is, what it means to be cynical or a cynic. Like pretty much the exact same thing. Like everybody just, well, look, it's not the exact same thing. Obviously, it's taken horribly out of context, but it is an extreme of what we see with Diogenes. Like the belief that everybody's just working in their own self-interest and nobody can be trusted. Yeah, it's sad. So so Epicureanism is a pleasant alternative. Epicurus taught that the root of human fear and anxiety is death denial, and I find this interesting because we already established that he wants a self-sufficient life surrounded by friends, absence from pain, and absence of fear. And he found that the root of fear is, I guess, not losing material wealth, but death denial. He thought that there's this tendency for humans to assume death will be super painful and terrible, and that causes like unnecessary anxiety and selfish, self-protective behaviors and hypocrisy.
Right.
So I guess you can sort of see that. I guess people are scared of death pretty often. Pretty reasonable fear to have.
Death is not something a lot of people like, no.
No, not really.
No, yeah, no.
And pretty often it is quite painful.
Yep.
I don't know if it's like horrific or terrible, like these translations say, but probably pretty painful.
Non-painful deaths are quite rare.
So Epicurus is like, okay, well that's the basis of fear. How do we get rid of it? Well, just don't fear death.
Oh,
Death
thank you. That fixes everything.
Okay, no. But the way he puts it is death is the end of body and soul. So it shouldn't be feared. So I don't know how you're supposed to interpret that. I guess the thought process, as usual, is how we think of it. And I've had this discussion with you before. How we think of it today as well, where it's like death is going to be exactly like how it was before you were born. In theory, we're not religious, but let's just ignore the religion aspect here. If you're not religious, then death is just going to be exactly like what it was before you were born, just nothing. And why would you fear that? I mean, it's zero experience. It's just the end.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't Mark Twain make a quote about that? Like, why would I be afraid of death? I've been dead for millions of years.
That's a good one. That's a good quote. That's a good way of putting it. I haven't heard of it, but I can definitely see the similarity, and I agree with it somewhat. I mean, of course, I don't think it's unreasonable to fear death in the sense that
exactly. It's one of those
you lose out on life.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those philosophy quotes that's like, haha, look at me, I'm so witty.
Yeah. I mean, once death is inevitable, like when you're on your deathbed, I don't necessarily think that you need to fear death, and I don't think most people do either. I think at that point they're pretty resigned. This is I've already done everything I can do, and now it's time to answer the final question or whatever. But as long as you're still relatively young, I mean, just going out there and being reckless is not a very good way of going about it. To me, at least. I mean, I'd be pretty scared of missing out on the rest of life because nothing sounds lame, and I want to have something.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing. I mean, there's the whole argument that you wouldn't experience nothingness because you're nothing.
Yeah, of course.
But it's still that doesn't sound very appealing either, does it? I mean, life sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, as long as life is more fun than it is unfun, nothing is not appealing. But I guess that's also the thing with suicidal people is that life is definitely more unfun than it is fun. So nothingness, which is just not nothing, obviously, it would be more appealing in that sense, even though you're not experiencing it, because you just escape from negative rather than being thrown away from positive. But okay, But this I did find very interesting, because Epicurus taught that the gods, though they do exist, have no involvement in human affairs. They don't punish or reward actions, so there's no positive or negative afterlife. And it seems, he says that the gods exist, but he seemed like pretty atheistic for his time with this thought process, and also the Epicurean paradox, which is attributed to him. Do you know? You'll definitely recognize it, maybe not by name.
Tell it.
It's the classic. Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Yeah. Then he is not omnipotent. Etc. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? Yeah. Well, that stuff, everybody's probably heard of it. That is attributed to Epicurus. He might be a bit of a slave of the system in that sense. Fan theory, Epicurus. This is my fan theory. Epicurus was an atheist. He pretended that the gods exist in order to not be ostracized by his communists.
This is just your headcanon here.
Yes. I literally just came up with it right now. But now that's just how I'm gonna choose to treat. Hey, I'm sure the argument could be made just based on this stuff. I mean, you can't really know, because if you were an atheist, would you be open about it? Even if you were a philosopher, probably not. Okay, but nonetheless, he believes that people should behave ethically, because amoral behavior will burden them with guilt. And being burdened with guilt means that you don't achieve peace and freedom from fear. So this is what I like. This is what I really liked and found interesting about Epicurus and Epicureanism. Is this, especially this facet, because again, it really takes the stance of atheists today as well, where it's like, you don't need to fear the punishment, or like that you don't need to fear God's punishment to live a moral life. I mean, typically the counter argument we use, at least I don't know about you, but typically the counter argument we use when that's brought up is that we still have empathy, right?
Right.
But this is also another sort of view of it, is that acting amorally will burden you with guilt or something. I guess it still works in the same vein. Like, the reason you're burdened with guilt is because you have empathy and regret for what you did. But okay. So that is interesting. That I like. Epicurus agrees that you don't need a fear of God to behave ethically. Instant brownie points. Not to offend any religious people out here. We got to get into that PC culture next time, I think.
Right, yeah, exactly. No bias here. Except for all the bias.
Pardon?
What bias?
Your voice is was a bit quiet there.
No bias here, except for all the bias. I mean, what bias?
What bias? There's no sunk cost fallacy here. I haven't spent my entire life atheist or anything. Nope. So Epicurus. So here I want to make something a bit clear. So, he was hedonistic in the sense that he taught that what's pleasurable is morally good and what's painful is morally evil. But not in the sense where you can freely overindulge in things. Okay? So sometimes, apparently, according to Wikipedia, Epicurus has been like referenced as a sort of patron saint of like drunkards and whoremongers. Is that what they called it?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's not really accurate, because he didn't believe that you can just get drunk and that's a good life. because pleasure is because he likes pleasure and the absence of pain and fear. He believes in living wisely, soberly, and morally. He had a strong disapproval of raw, excessive sensuality. Like he warned that you also have to take into account whether the consequences of your actions will result in suffering.
So basically, he was a big nerd.
Basically, he was a reasonable nerd. I like this Epicurus fellow. I think there are teachings we can also use from this. Don't drink away your problems, kid. Don't do drugs.
Don't do the drugs. Drugs are bad.
I've got a quote for you. Epicurus says, "The pleasant life is produced not by a string of drinking bouts and revelries, nor by the enjoyment of boys and women, nor by fish and the other items on an expensive menu, but by sober reasoning." Sober reasoning produces a pleasant life. Again, I have the same problem as I do with some other ancient philosophers. My problem is, could you actually make an argument rather than making a statement?
Right.
But I wish they did that more often. But okay, I'm probably just missing, or I probably just didn't do enough research. I'm sure you can find some really great logical links. But and you can probably think of it on your own as well. Just sit back and do some philosophizing.
Whoa, philosophy.
What are the downsides of drinking away my problems? It probably won't take you very long to find a few.
Yeah, I think I can think of a few things. Few small problems.
A few pretty. I don't know. I think the problems are pretty minuscule, honestly. Not a big deal.
Exactly. I don't like. Why even worry?
I'm just going to move on here. Furthermore, it is not possible to live pleasurably without living sensibly and nobly and justly. So many adjectives these guys use, but still. And it's reiterating the same arguments earlier, which is that dishonesty and injustice leads to your conscience being loaded with troubles and guilt, and which leads to constant fear of discovery, like if other people find out all those bad things you did. And fear is bad. You want to avoid fear, and guilt and troubles are bad because that means you're not at peace. Okay,
that's illegal.
And that means you cannot achieve ataraxia. On the contrary, kind and just people will have no fear and will be more likely to attain ataraxia. So Epicurus, he's not really on an extreme, and that's what I like about him. He's not like hedonistic, get all the material possessions and wealth. He's like, a feast can be enjoyed just as much as a piece of cheese. He's like, you can enjoy the simple pleasures in life, and that's a good life. You don't have to give up all your material wealth. You don't need to turn into a Diogenes.
Yeah, exactly.
You also don't need to turn into a crazy Roman emperor who gets full of himself and arrogant and evil, corrupted by power. Yeah,
exactly. You can just sit down and you can enjoy a nice, healthy copy of Euro Truck Simulator 2, including the special edition, including the Go East package. And
obviously,
that's just a good life.
That is a great life. You can just simple pleasures like Euro Truck Simulator and how you achieve happiness and how you achieve fulfillment. I guess fulfillment is really what this is all about. All these people are just striving for achieving fulfillment, and I think they're like nowadays. I think the way you'd go about it is, everybody sort of has a different goal in life. I get that Diogenes is trying to achieve fulfillment one way, but I think simply by believing that he achieved fulfillment, he did, and simply by believing that Epicurus has achieved fulfillment and happiness with these things, he probably also did, and that has a strong impact. And people can achieve fulfillment in different ways. You don't gotta stick to your own philosophy.
Considering other people's views?
What?
That's illegal.
No, considering that people have different priorities in life, different desires, different things they want.
Exile to you.
Wow, exile to you. Pretty much the ancient Greek mindset. Do you know what determinism? We've talked about determinism and free will, right?
Right?
Epicurus did have one facet of like determinism that he like he thought about determinism and free will pretty much is what I wanted to explain here. Determinism free will is already something that people thought about in ancient Greece, and Epicurus believed that people have free will in an otherwise deterministic universe because he believed in the atomic theory of the universe. He believed that everything was built up of atoms already.
Right.
Which is pretty impressive. But he also believed that there's something called atomic swerve, which is that atoms may deviate from their expected course, thus permitting humans to possess free will. Which is pretty much like, huh?
Is this a JoJo's reference?
He pretty much made an exception for human consciousness, or the human conscious, in how material works, in order to justify to himself the existence of free will, well, like along with the world being deterministic. So still not logical in every possible way, but in other ways he made some good points.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's just describing like the power of King Crimson here.
I don't know who that is.
In JoJo's Part 5.
Is that a JoJo's reference?
It is a JoJo's reference.
Oh my gosh, that's a JoJo's reference. Let's ignore the JoJo's reference and move on to Zeno of Citium. So we're gonna, like, I know I broached the topic of free will and determinism there. We're gonna get to that later. Lots more philosophers to talk about determinism and free will, and we're not going to talk about all of them because we want to focus on politics. But later, we're going chronologically. There will be so much. There is lots of chronology.
Oh wow!
Okay.
Yes.
Zeno of Citium was the founder of Stoicism. He was heavily influenced by cynicism, and he saw. So even though he agreed in achieving happiness through life in accordance with nature, he disagreed with cynicism in terms of what nature entailed. Okay. So whilst the cynics take this more rudimentary approach, I guess this really basic, like nature as in a wilderness. The Stoics believe that people are meant to live with each other in communities and are meant to treat each other with respect, and that nature intended for men to be civilized. So, and it makes sense as an argument to make, considering so often we do act civilized, and it doesn't feel unnatural. On the contrary, it would feel unnatural to be uncivilized. But I guess the cynic's counter-argument is that, well, you only think that because you grew up in a society and were brainwashed.
We live in a society.
You're a slave of the system.
Bottom text.
But again, I mean, I know I'm biased, but this sounds already a lot more reasonable, right? Yeah. I mean, people by nature started living in societies. I mean, we used to live the way Diogenes did, but through completely natural processes, we found living in societies to be advantageous.
Yeah, we were.
So why are you're the one regressing, Diogenes? How do you not see it?
Yeah, I feel like it's. I mean, there's bias, and then there's just recognizing like bad ideas.
Yep. But what I like about Stoicism as well is that it's meant as a practical philosophy for how to live in society. So Zeno teaches us to accept what is out of our control, including the behavior of others, and so not to try to break social norms and change how everyone lives, like the cynics. As you can expect, there is like some serious opposition between the two, because Stoicism came after cynicism, and it's sort of based on it in the with that same starting point: achieve happiness. Everybody likes happiness, I guess. Achieve eudaimonia, but achieve it through a life in accordance with nature. It's just what nature entails is what they disagree on, and so there's a lot of opposition between the two. But as the name suggests, Stoicism, stoic, they teach us to just live with resolve and accept our lot in life. I mean, without going too much into the divine, because they do believe that there's like a divine cause for each of us, and like we should just accept life and be pulled through it by the strings of fate or whatever. But without going too much into that, it is really about learning to accept what's out of our control and not worry about it.
Right.
Okay, so whilst the cynics don't even see the point of having personal possessions, because you can't keep them when we die, and trying to keep them or get more of them causes us stress and prevents us from fully enjoying life, blah de blah. The solution for Stoics is to avoid anxiety and excessive desire by training your mind to think rationally and learn to accept that a negative outcome might happen and that's out of your control. So that's the counter argument to what we were talking about with people getting stressed out and worried about
owning their copy of Euro Truck Simulator 2 Special
about
Edition
trying
includes
to,
Go East, new
about
Cadler.
trying to pay for crap because they're
Yep.
trying to own things like many poor people do, and well obviously also middle class and wealthy people, but
Yeah.
I guess the worries come primarily in the middle class and poor.
Yeah, so instead of your solution being throw everything out, you can just train your mind to learn to own that copy of Euro Truck Simulator 2 Special Edition includes Go East.
No, you just instead of that's I think you might be missing the point a little bit. No. The point isn't to train your mind to be like, oh, it doesn't matter that I've got problems. I don't need to try to solve the problems.
Wait, that's awful.
I can blissfully ignore the taxes.
No, wait, no.
And just
No, stop.
No. The teaching is rather that when negative outcomes that you accept that negative outcomes might happen, but that's out of your control. You don't got to worry about it. You just be stoic.
Exactly. It's like if you have a problem and you can do something about it, then where's the problem? If you have a problem and you can't do something about it, then where's the problem?
Exactly. That's always what I when people come to me for advice, which not many people do, but the people that do come for me advice, I always try to first I don't try to give advice. I try to get the person to solve their own problem. You try to think about what they can and do what they can, and then what you can't do, why think about it? Why worry about it?
Exactly. That's what I was
It's
saying.
like, oh no, my exam went really badly and I feel terrible. Like, okay, at this point, how can you make yourself feel better? Well, you can try to study more for next time.
Or if you have the option, then you can study to retake it.
Yep, you can study for the retest. And what you probably shouldn't do is worry about what grade you're gonna get, because you have no control over that. So don't cry about the fact you're gonna get like a 6 from that. 6 out of 10 is the scale we work with here in Finland most of the time. Instead of worrying about getting that 6, you can worry about actually making progress, doing something useful with your time.
Yeah. Then of course comes the problem that like emotions aren't that simple, and you can't just like not worry about something.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is about training the mind, though. It's like supposedly something that you can train, and that's the sort of lesson for Stoics, is that you don't need to live in poverty to avoid the fear of losing money, because you can accept losing money. Whilst most people would be super worried about that and like, oh no, I lost money, oh no, I broke my PS3,
yes.
Terrible.
Oh man, those Greeks were really worried about breaking their PS3s. Oh no.
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to use analogies with real life. Okay, like using this mentality in real life instead of going, no, what are you achieving?
Yeah,
You're not achieving anything.
I remember when I was back in 300 BC and I was like, oh man, how am I gonna pay for my copy of Euro Truck Simulator 2 Special Edition includes Go East?
Oh, that's what I should have said. That's what I should have said in retort. Yeah. So to a skillful Stoic, doesn't have to withdraw from political life or to like ignore the business world, and because they're not going to fall into the same traps most people do.
Right.
They're not going to get stressed out and unhappy. Because they're ready to accept risk. They're ready to accept that there are things that they can't control, and they're ready to accept the outcome, whatever it is. Because so that is something I like about this mindset, and I think we're going to end this off with a few lessons that I managed to pick out from all three of these philosophies, because I don't think any one of them has the solution alone. Again, for different people, I think different things are going to work, because it's just people have different desires, and I sort of with the Stoic mindset, you can't just like make other people act a different way, and you really shouldn't worry about trying to make other people act a certain way. You know, they're gonna have people are gonna have different desires, and you don't need to force them to have the desires that you like.
Yeah, I feel
instead you can try to
exactly. I feel like rather than trying to change people's values and desires, it's better to try and find compromise that fits everyone's values and desires. Because you're not
a
gonna
good way to put it.
Yeah, because you're not easily gonna.
That's what politics is about.
Exactly, you're not easily gonna get to change someone's mind, because people are actively resistant to change, especially on like things like their values and what they care about.
I should qualify that. That's how a representative democracy works.
Aha.
Yeah, politics in general. Sometimes you get political systems where that's not how it works. Finding compromises. Cough, cough. Two-party systems. Cough, cough. Dictatorship.
Fun times.
But yeah. Something like in a representative democracy like Finland, where you've got lots of different parties and they have to form coalitions to get a majority. You already know that those coalitions are going to have to be compromising between themselves, like between the parties that are part of the coalition. So that's what politics is really based on: making a society where everybody can live under the same rules and everybody can find fulfillment. And that's sort of Aristotle's viewpoint. That's sort of the viewpoint of these guys as well. When they do consider politics, they go, good politics is the one that makes my philosophy possible.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all the politics that they really think about. And I'm inclined to agree so far with what we've studied about in that aspect. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, understandably, what else could politics be about? Creating a society where everybody can be safe and secure and fulfill themselves. I mean, what else could it possibly be about?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now let's take those three lessons that I've picked out, one from each, okay? From the Cynics. What do we learn from the Cynics? Well, that we shouldn't be afraid to challenge social constructs that are unfair or harmful. Okay, I'm stretching the cynicism a little bit in order to make this point. But it's not a long shot, because it is about challenging social constructs. To say, okay, sometimes there are social constructs that are unfair, that are harmful, that hurt people. You shouldn't just roll with social constructs and traditions just for the sake of it. Sometimes they deserve to be challenged because you can make them better. That's fine. You can sometimes social constructs need to be challenged if you identify ones that are harmful. Okay, from the Epicureans, we learn that we don't need to live in great wealth to achieve pleasure and happiness. Of course, that's something that people talk about fairly often, so we don't right, like happiness is not about money, blah blah. And it's true that you don't need a lot of wealth to achieve happiness and pleasure, and also overindulging in pleasurable things will never be worthwhile is something else we'd learn. Like, overindulging in alcohol or drugs will never be worthwhile. And from the Stoics we get, it's not worth stressing over things that are out of your control. I think those are the three main lessons that we could get from these three schools.
Yeah.
You're inclined to agree?
I'm very inclined to agree, yes.
Do you think you're gonna take these three and implement them into your everyday life?
Probably not, no.
Which one
I'm just gonna like stick to the status quo and not take anything from this.
All right, and with that, I think it's about time to wrap this up.
That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, everybody who listened this long. I think this episode was fairly good. We didn't have any. We didn't have many, if any, awkward moments. So we're definitely improving at this whole podcasting thing.
I think we're getting this down. Yeah, this is going great.
And next time we can get to Rome, and all the viewers, if any of you stuck through all the way to the end, leave a comment down below.
Please leave a comment down below. Please, we're so desperate.
All right. Thank you, everyone, if you've been listening so far. I hope you're enjoying watching us make these discoveries and go through history of politics and philosophy, and watch us get better at podcasting. Next time, we're going to go to Rome, and that's going to be super exciting.
You know what they say. All roads lead to Rome.
All roads lead to Rome. That's a good ending.
This has been the Paradigm Shift Podcast. See you next time.